Let's go back in history and let's remember a time when women did not need to be empowered because they had power. We had shared power. And let's go back to those moments and help the world, and Africa in particular, claim that shared power. We need a diverse group of women and a real representation at the table to ensure that our ambitions around economic transformation are realized, because 50% of Africa's population is truly at the table.
The armed forces in Namibia will be for the first time saluting a female commander-in-chief, first female president. And this is important because power at the very top matters.
Together we can create a future where no woman is left behind, a future where every woman has the opportunity to rise and succeed, fueling progress for generations to come.
A woman with a narrative has a strong will, and it's all about self-esteem, and it's all about persistence.
I keep telling my sisters, invade the boardroom space, sit in investment committees, and if you are not given a chair, take a folding chair.
When African countries take intentional action on gender equality, their economies grow stronger, more competitive, and more resilient.
For this really important session. Thank you so much for being in attendance. Obviously, the reason why we're all here is to see really the opportunities that are available for us in different platforms. But I think this room, possibly the most important one, and I may be biased, but I want to actually just give you the, set the tone a little bit. Of course, you are now part of the African Center for Economic Transformation's Intergenerational Dialogue. We're having this conversation under the theme, Young Africans Leading the Change, Driving Gender-Inclusive Economic Transformation. But if you'll allow me, I want to just perhaps go back and say, let's look at what we're actually facing as a continent. It is 2025. At this point on our continent, the majority of our population is under the age of 25. So let's think about that for a moment. That is an incredibly young population. A few years ago, I had a conversation with a professor that I will not name, but he talked about this burgeoning youth population in Africa. And he spoke about it with great fear. It wasn't an exciting characteristic of how our continent actually looks. In fact, what the professor said was that the young people of Africa are bulging so big and so fast that if we do not feed them, they will eat us and engulf us. I mean, wow, what an image, right? Immediately I started thinking about this wave of frustrated and disillusioned young people just burning and ruining and tearing everything apart on the continent. But do you believe that that is the correct portrayal of African youth? When you look at just how African youth are actually participating in their own economies, you'll actually be quite impressed. You've got young women who are self-employed. In fact, there are more young self-employed women on the continent than there are young men. That's an incredible stat. That's an energetic grouping of people. You have young people that are innovating and creating the most incredible pieces of work. I think about how many of those, though, have fallen between the cracks. If you remember stories about a young person in Malawi has built a car. You seen some of those stories? A young Zimbabwean, for instance, has built a self-sustaining car. Now, that may not necessarily attract energy sort of investors, but it speaks to the innovation that's available. But are those innovations being supported? are they seeing the next step, or are they just articles that we read about and say, wow, such clever young Africans, but do we support them? So today we're going to talk about just that, what it is that needs to happen for us to see the support for young African businesses and certainly for women. A lot of them operating in the informal sector. So how do we start to formalize them? The informal sector contributing a massive amount of GDP to all of our countries. But what do we do to ensure that they're actively part of the economy? We cannot change our communities without being able to change those people that are directly feeding our communities. And that needs finance. So today we really want to focus on financial inclusion for women. It's progressing way too slowly. We want to get to a point where we see full inclusion. But that also needs to come with some sort of policy direction, right? You need decisive legislation that says, okay, this is how we're going to shape how our countries do business. And what are those contributions from a policy writing point of view that are necessary? We're also going to talk a little bit about then how we start to give all of these businesses access to market, the opportunity to scale up, to have visibility, and also to see how they contribute to the greater global knowledge economy, which is what a lot of these young innovators are able to do. You're going to hear from some of them this morning. And I implore you to, throughout this discussion, start to note down your questions, because the most impactful discussion is one that goes two ways, not just from the stage to the audience, but back again. So towards the end, we will of course allow you to come up and just share your questions and thoughts for us. But that's the opening. The intention here is to say, let's come out of here with some workable solutions that say, all right, so we can see opportunities in young people, that they're not this wave of frightening, Africans that are disillusioned, but rather a massive opportunity for us to invest in what they have to offer in their potential. Please can we welcome onto the stage Ms. Maura K. Leary, who is the Director of Communications for the African Center for Economic Transformation, who's going to open things up for us formally, and then we shall get started. Please give her a warm round of applause.
Thank you so much, Naledi. Excellencies, distinguished guests of all ages, partners and friends, on behalf of all of us at the African Center for Economic Transformation, let me say welcome, bienvenue, akwaba, to this intergenerational dialogue. We are very grateful for your engagement, whether you're here in the room with us in Abidjan, or if you're joining us online, which is hopefully streaming at this point. I want to give a special thanks to our partners at the African Development Bank for providing the space for us to hold this discussion during their annual meetings, and to the MasterCard Foundation for their long-standing partnership with Asset to drive inclusive transformation on the African continent. As you'll see around you, this week is all about making Africa's capital work better for Africa. And when you hear the word capital, you might think of minerals, money, oil, of carbon, but there is no resource more valuable than Africa's people, no engine of growth more powerful than Africa's youth, and no stronger catalyst for transformation than Africa's women. We are in a moment of incredible opportunity to redirect the course of Africa's development. As the traditional global order stands at a crossroads, African countries have a chance to create their own set of collective rules that strengthen and serve the African market, regardless of what the rest of the world is doing. This is the moment for Africa to truly transform. But how can the continent transform when its women will be waiting another 68 years for full financial and economic inclusion? How can the continent transform when policy decisions get in the way of young entrepreneurs' success, and education fails to equip young people with the skills they need to succeed? The short answer is it can't. But the longer answer, and the good news is, many of the solutions already exist. They just need to be implemented. This will require a powerful coalition of young Africans, women, and seasoned policymakers to drive things forward. We must create more consistent platforms that bring these groups together in service of Africa's future. Now, I go to a lot of these meetings, and I'm sure many of you do as well, whether it's here in Abidjan, whether it's in Nairobi, whether it's in Washington, D.C. or London or anywhere else. And I've noticed kind of a common theme, which is that young people and women are often given a seat on a platform. And I do mean just one seat. And often they have to share it. It's sort of, do we have a woman on this panel? Check. Do we have a young person on this panel? Check. Or young people and women are kind of put in their own separate silos and only interacting briefly with existing leaders. So they're sort of having conversations among themselves, but that connection never really gets made between existing leaders and emerging leaders. That is no way to chart a course for Africa's transformation. So today's going to be a little bit different. You will see younger leaders and more seasoned professionals exchanging ideas as equals. You will see men and women getting equal airtime. And I hope we will see many of you online and in the room sharing great ideas and arguments with your colleagues. At Asset, we are committed to being a resource and a sounding board for you, providing the evidence you need to hold your governments and institutions to account, and creating a space for you to engage, argue, and be heard by policymakers and institutions that are at the forefront of this work. This is not about replacing men with women across the board or kicking out everyone over 30, in which case I would be in big trouble. This is about partnership. It's about creating a space for leaders, innovators, and advocates to connect across generations, learn from one another, and solve problems together. There's a great quote that says, leadership is not about the title you hold, but the impact you make. It is my sincere hope that today's conversation will serve as an incubator of sorts between all of the leaders in this room and in our virtual room, creating critical threads between generations and issues that can be woven into a broader platform for impact. But before we begin our panel discussion, I would like to turn to a few videos that are going to help us set the scene even better than I can do. The first is going to highlight some leading women across the continent and our latest analysis on gender, youth, and economic transformation. And the second is a message from our valued partner on today's event, the MasterCard Foundation. So let's take a moment to watch together. Thank you very much.
De nos partenaires importants, la MasterCard Foundation.
Let's go back in history and let's remember a time when women did not need to be empowered because they had power. We had shared power. And let's go back to those moments and help the world, and Africa in particular, claim that shared power. We need a diverse group of women and a real representation at the table to ensure that our ambitions around economic transformation are realized, because 50% of Africa's population is truly at the table.
The armed forces in Namibia will be for the first time saluting a female commander-in-chief, first female president. And this is important because power at the very top matters.
Together we can create a future where no woman is left behind, a future where every woman has the opportunity to rise and succeed, fueling progress for generations to come.
A woman with a narrative has a strong will, and it's all about self-esteem, and it's all about persistence.
I keep telling my sisters, invade the boardroom space, sit in investment committees, and if you are not given a chair, take a folding chair.
When African countries take intentional action on gender equality, their economies grow stronger, more competitive, and more resilient.
we had shared power. And let's go back to those moments and help the world, and Africa in particular, claim that shared power.
As a citizen of this city, we believe that our action to make it cleaner would be to recycle at least one type of waste.
On a plus de dizaines de centaines de milliers de pneus été. Est-ce que ça aurait été offert? En tout cas, c'est presque indénombrable.
A waste tire doesn't decompose unless you burn it. So this is how we come up with the idea of making research about tire recycling, and this is how everything started.
Quand un pneu arrive chez Ecova, il est recyclé à 100%, on va dire presque pour le nylon. Tout est totalement recyclé. Chez nous, c'est du zéro déchet. D'ailleurs, notre devise c'est rien ne se perd, tout se transforme.
Every time I see a tire on the city, I'm just like, I'm coming for you.
Fueling progress for generations to come.
My name is Millicent Adoboy, Deputy CEO of Achieva Force Limited. Achieva Force Limited is on a mission to save lives through organically grown tech-bearing foods that we process and add value to them into teas, juices, cereal mix powders, and jam spreads. Their motivation and their passion to see that people eat healthy diets, eat healthy foods. The fact that we are creating jobs, improving the livelihoods of people, and contributing to food security, and especially a shared African prosperity. That is really what keeps me moving.
My name is Ovanochukwu Riomachi. I'm the co-founder of Prep Class. We're an edtech company located in Lagos, Nigeria. So Prep Class connects learners and tutors across the country.
The model that Prep Class works on is something that became much more important during the pandemic. Learning through the online platform, connecting learners to tutors from anywhere, you can learn from anywhere at any time, became much more important during the pandemic. And I think that's one of the benefits of having a company like this that merges technology and education.
As long as we're able to impact lives, both on the tutor side and on the learner side, we believe this product is something that could be game-changing across the entire continent.
So without wasting any more time, let's get into our panel discussion with our various speakers, and I'm going to invite them onto the stage one at a time. I'd like to first start off by inviting the Chief Partnerships for Policy and Resources Mobilization at the African Development Bank, Mrs. Cynthia Lillian Kamikaze, as you come up onto the stage. She is a seasoned investment and development leader with over 20 years experience in resource mobilization, strategic partnerships and policy positioning across multilateral banks as well as government and global development agencies. A warm round of applause for her as she comes up, please. I'd also like to welcome up onto the stage the president for DigiFems. This is the managing director and co-founder of Impact Hub Abidjan. Nadine Zoro is a digital inclusion advocate, and she has trained over 15,000 people, particularly women entrepreneurs. Incredible. That's since 2022. So a lot getting done in a very short period of time. She's co-founder and managing director of Impact Hub Abidjan. She supports local startups and leads the WIC Academy to drive inclusive and sustainable digital and entrepreneurial transformation. Please give her a warm round of applause. And this is where now you're going to hear more and more of these digital, very innovative young people with their businesses starting to come up, and also just how they're impacting other people's lives. One such is the co-founder and chief marketing officer of Piggy Tech. Joshua Chibweze is the co-founder and chief marketing officer, the parent company of Piggy Vest and Pocket App. which have helped over 7 million users save and manage more money, more than 2.8 trillion naira. Incredible, so young and already able to help others build their wealth. Please give him a warm round of applause. Also joining us on the stage, and this is a fellow sister of mine from South Africa, founder and CEO of SkillQuest, a co-founder and CEO of the Mwelase Foundation, and director in brand reputation, Africa Women Financial Inclusion Initiative. Ketiwe Nkuna is a multi-award-winning entrepreneur and social impact leader with more than 20 years experience across South Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, and global markets. We'll find out more about what our team does this morning. But once again, a warm round of applause. Let's get started, though. Cynthia, I think it would be great to start with you, actually, so we can get our intention right, okay? Just what it is that you want to hear from a discussion like this, and what is important for the African Development Bank to talk about not just the policy writing that's necessary for youth and women empowerment, and certainly funding and giving them financial inclusion, but also how we start to identify as many of those innovators as we can possibly find.
Beaucoup de ces innovatrices.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Bonjour à tous, est-ce que vous pouvez m'entendre? Bonjour, c'est un véritable plaisir et un honneur d'être ici.
Sorry, my voice. Can you hear me? Yes, this is much better. Good morning, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here.
C'est un plaisir d'être là.
A real honor. I'm here
un honneur. Je suis ici représentant Dr. Makapiri,
the director for Human Capital at the African Development Bank, as well as
Capital Humain à la BAD, ainsi que du département genre et femmes.
Thank you for being here this
Merci
morning,
d'être là ce
all
matin.
of you. Thank you for the question.
Merci pour la question.
Before I actually go into the details of
Avant
what
d'entrer
the
dans
bank
les détails de ce que la banque avec ses partenaires fait
in support to
pour appuyer
empowerment,
l'autonomisation des jeunes,
I don't like that word very much.
Même si je n'aime pas trop ce mot.
So we must look at the statistics that keeps on coming. We know that only 44% of women have access to form of financial accounts, and we also know that at that rate, full financial inclusion for women will not be achieved until 2093. We also know that youth unemployment remains above 60% in several African countries. And with that in mind, the African Development Bank for the past 10 years or so has put in place strategies both for women as well as youth on the continent to actually to not only unlock capital towards women and the youth, but also to address the youth unemployment and skills development in order to access, not only in order to access market, access finances, but also in order to be equipped with the skills necessary. Can you hear me? Sorry. That to be equipped with the skills necessary to be entrepreneurial, but also be employable. So some of the strategies and initiatives include the gender equality or the gender strategy, as well as its action plan. And the pillars of these gender strategies look at access to finance, skills and employability, and infrastructure, which is the biggest investment in the bank. With under the gender strategy as well as its action plan, the bank has created, if I may say, or designed one of the biggest initiatives on the continent, actually globally, and this is called AfDB Initiative, and AfDB's vision is to unlock 5 billion by 2026 towards women access to finance. And of that, already 2.5 billion has been committed, and 1.225 actually, half of that has already been dispersed to the women through financial institutions. Beyond AfDB, when we look at the youth, the bank has the Jobs for Youth in Africa strategy with several initiatives under it, all to unlock access, to unlock capital towards young Africans in terms of both for their access to capital but also skills development. And some of these initiatives include Youth Entrepreneurial Investment Banks, which has already been created in a couple of African countries. And we also have the Youth Entrepreneurship and Innovation Multi-Donor Trust Fund that equips the co-finances or finances projects within countries, project preparations, and has targeted already 11 countries. There is also coding for employment programs as well as Enable Youth program. And all of this under the youth strategy of the bank. Of course, there is also, under the private sector, we also have the African Digital and Financial Inclusion Initiative, AfDB. But what I wanted to highlight, which Maura said, touched upon in her opening remarks, is that none of this can be done without the partners that we work with. Like I said, AfDB is already working with more than 180 financial institutions, is targeting or aims at supporting or unlocking 5 billion and supporting more than 30,000 women. This cannot be done without the partnership that we're doing with African Guarantee Fund, financial institutions, but also governments. And AfDB, there are 3 pillars, which includes financial access to finance, but also policy dialogue or enabling environment, ensuring an enabling environment, which of course talks about or that works with governments and regulators to change the business scene for young and for women and the young people as well. Sorry, my voice is a little bit hoarse. But in addition to that, with under the gender strategy, the bank ensures that all the bank's projects are marked through what we call the gender mark assistance. And I can go a little bit more into the details of any of these things that I've talked about afterwards. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Please give her a warm round of applause. It's great when you start to see the institutional infrastructure that's available, that's already giving resources to innovative young and female-led projects. So that needing to be highlighted and definitely celebrated. Let's speak to some of our innovators and change makers now that have joined us on the panel. I'm so excited to hear from all of you. Josh, I'll let you go first. You're the only gentleman on this panel. Good luck to you. Wishing you the very best. But Josh, I'm really keen for you to tell us a little bit about some of the work that you do, right? And how it was you were able to, as briefly as you can, build digital infrastructure and systems that also helps others build their wealth. Lessons that you've learned from doing so. And then, of course, there's this, incredibly a beautiful thing about the fourth industrial revolution is that you've got fintechs, for instance, that are able to reach just some of the most vulnerable people, and you can talk about the opportunity that lies there and how you spotted it, certainly.
Okay, hi everyone. Good morning. I'm excited to be here, and thank you for those questions. So my name is Joshua Chibueze, one of the co-founders and CMO at PiggyVest. The work that we do started in 2016 from a very simple tweet. I like to tell the story just to give context of how we began. Someone had saved up 1,000 naira every day from putting aside. Someone had saved up 365,000 naira from putting aside 1,000 naira every day in a box. And the person broke that box and then put a picture online and it went viral. And everyone wanted to save. And then we saw that tweet and decided to digitize the process of putting aside money in a box every day. Now the problem is there was no savings culture in Nigeria. What people would typically do is resort to traditional methods, so like Ajo, it's called Isusu, basically group savings. Or what they'll do is they'll actually buy a physical box and put it under their beds. Or they open multiple bank accounts and maybe not collect an ATM card for one of those accounts so they can actually save. So people wanted to save, but they didn't have the means to save. And that's because a typical bank in Nigeria will give you a debit card for a savings account because they actually make money when you spend money, right? So it was not encouraging people to save, so there was no savings culture in Nigeria at the time. People had to resort to their own traditional means. So we saw that tweet and we decided to digitize the process. Basically, automate the process of having to save money daily, weekly, or monthly. And it was innovative, it was genius, and people caught up to it very quickly. Something that started out as simple as, so it was a simple, we didn't have a mobile app at the time, it was just a website that we started with in 2016. Then we went on to develop a mobile app in 2017, and it just started to grow. In the whole of 2016, we helped our users save 21 million naira, right? And today, where I'm speaking in Naira terms, maybe I'll try to convert that. But today we're helping our users save at least 3 billion naira every day, right? And that's just to show the scale of impact on what we're doing in Nigeria. So I like to say that fintechs are not here to disrupt banks, for instance. We're only creating new markets, right? Banks have existed, they have their own interesting things that they're doing, which is fine, but then there are fundamental needs that are not still being solved today. So when you look at the average young person, right, they're not included when it comes to banking, right? They don't have sufficient data to access credit. A lot of things are still very fragmented. They don't even want to walk into any bank branch to perform any action. They want to do everything from the comfort of their phones. So there's already that shift, right? And fintechs are just basically leveraging that shift in behavior. So for instance, you use the bank, you just put money there, the bank keeps your money. But what we're trying to do at PiggyVest is alter the behavior of the customer to think about managing their money better. So we tell you, on vous dit, ok, vous ne pouvez pas avoir accès à ce fonds pendant 2 semaines, vous ne pouvez pas avoir accès à ce fonds pendant 3 mois. Tout ceci est personnalisé. Vous pouvez programmer. Ce que nous voulons, c'est changer le comportement. Young Nigerians and how they see money, how they use money, how they manage money, how they save money, and how they invest money. So it's beyond access, right? It's more of a behavioral change that leads to some of the impact. I hear stories about some of our users who've bought cars, bought land, they've done a lot of things, they're able to pay rent. Also, another thing I want to mention is Africa is not a credit-led economy, which means we have to pay for things in bulk, or we have to pay, in full, pretty much, right? So things like rent, for instance, if you do not absolutely save for your rent, you cannot afford it. So in Nigeria, for instance, landlords are asking you for 2 years rent upfront, which means you must save. So if you don't have the means to do that, then you're screwed, right? So basically, what we're trying to do is solve real problems, right? And you can call it banking needs, but solve real problems for real people, help them achieve, help them do things.
Thank you so much. Please give them a warm round of applause. That's incredible. There's so much confidence in being able to have, control over your own finances, and it helps then young people and women, I imagine, then to go on and build something more with what they're able to hold on to. I'm going to bring in Ketiwe now. She, of course, having done quite a bit of work in upskilling young businesses, and tell us a little bit about that as briefly as you can. I'm going to start being quite strict with time, obviously. Apologies. But also just talk to us, Ketiwe, about what do you think it would take to see an across the continent sort of skills pipeline, right? That also doesn't just look at skills development, but funding and access to opportunity. And that is utopian to imagine, and what you picture.
Thank you so much, Naledi, and good morning, everyone. Lovely to be here today. So I think an important thing, Naledi, to highlight is really the importance to rethink skilling. And I'm very passionate about the role of technology as an equalizer. So I really do think that we really need to make sure that we do leverage technology, and some of the work I've done that you spoke about, for example, and what we continue to do as well through Mwelase Foundation, is demand-led skilling. So identifying what are the skills gaps. And a lot of that is also leveraging technology to understand what those skills gaps are. Leveraging artificial intelligence, predictive analytics. So for example, we know that right now there's a lot of work being done around skilling around artificial intelligence. And the opportunity as well, and the important part of localization as well, right? Around making sure that artificial intelligence works for the African context. We need to be part of that in shaping from a culture point of view, from a gender point of view, and the like. So through that, what we've seen is also then an opportunity to be ahead of the game. And that's what we need to do, right, as the continent, where we understand in 18 months and in 12 months and even 2 years, these are the skills that are going to be required. But we don't then only start post-school, right? We infuse that from an early stage, so cradle to career model. So these are the models that we need to look at, where we infuse this into the school programs. We infuse it post-school, in tertiary, and really also flipping education upside down to leverage technology. We really need to rethink how we drive education, right? And through this, we've seen, for example, work I've done in South Africa, where in a matter of 5 years, we impacted over 92,000 young people. And for me, the real success is not that 92,000 people have been skilled. How many of them have gotten to jobs? It speaks to your question about opportunity. It has to be demand-led. And if it's demand-led, the 92,000 I'm talking about, over 85% of them went into jobs. And we also have then about 5% of them starting their own businesses, And unpacking into your question around what could be done at a Pan-African continental level, we need to also look at localization. The starting point is localization, understanding what the gaps are in Lagos, what the gaps are in Ntumo, in KZN, in KwaZulu-Natal, and then aggregate that data to then build those programs that are accelerating the skills development. So what that will take, it takes intentionality, right? It takes intentionality and collaboration, and really driving a collective impact framework is what I often speak about, where government, institutions, donors, the development sector, and educational institutions across the continent work together, whether it's leveraging platforms like the African Development Bank or leveraging the African Free Trade Continental Trade. Those are opportunities that can actually be accelerated. And so what we've also really enabled as Mwelase Foundation is really taking opportunities where young people are. I always say that big business is not growing any bigger. instead it's shrinking. So it's really an opportunity for us to accelerate the impact around entrepreneurship and leveraging rural communities and taking opportunities where rural communities are. Whether it's training young people in rural schools, in after-school programs in artificial intelligence and robotics, as young as 6 years, it's possible, because what that does is early exposure, and it gives young people the art of the possible, where it's not only young people that are in well-off in cities that have access to opportunities. So the ultimate right, it is going to take, I think, the intentionality, collaboration, and really leveraging technology, because that is how we're able to scale new models of education.
So localization, looking inward, identifying what is needed, and then focusing on filling that gap. Intentional, very intentional. Nadine, I'm going to give this one to you. DigiFems, very exciting. Talk to us about, please give Kitty a warm round of applause. Thank you. Tell us about DigiFems, some of your highlights about what you have been able to do for women in the digital space. And then, of course, talk to us a little bit about, how that has been able to translate in great opportunities and access for them as well.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Nadine Zoro. I am the president of DigiFem Côte d'Ivoire and also one of the co-founders of Impact Hub Abidjan and also the manager. I want to take us back to a bit of why I'm working in this field and what we've been doing so far. So I went to the African Leadership Academy in South Africa, where I studied entrepreneurial leadership. And coming from a very basic neighborhood here in Côte d'Ivoire and going to South Africa and seeing how I was transformed by the process I went into when I was trained in entrepreneurship and leadership made me realize the potential of my neighborhood, made me realize the potential of the youth around me and people that were smarter than me or had more knowledge than me. So when I came back and going forward into university and the rest of my training, for me the mission was, how do I become an entrepreneurial evangelist? How do I make sure that everybody around me understand that when you take change into your hands, you can have agency and things can change around you. Not only you as an individual, but also the community will change around you if you understand that you have the power to make things change. So that's also why I created with some of my co-founders Impact Hub Abidjan. But managing today DigiFem, what we do with DigiFem is we are a women's entrepreneurship program initially, and we're working to improve the ecosystem around women entrepreneurs. How we do this is by taking into consideration what our local ecosystem is made out of when it comes to entrepreneurship and when it comes to innovation. Lately in our spaces, I work in an incubation. People talk in an incubation, people talk about startups and all the power of technology and the rest, but most of our economies are made of SMEs. And most of them are informal even. They are not even registered SMEs. We have so many women that are entrepreneurs, that are working in spaces that are not regulated and that are also not formalized. How do we create an ecosystem around them so the power and the resources that they are actually creating for the economy can be boosted, and we can then boost our economy based on what we have? We talk about transformation and agency and all.
De transformation et de représentativité et de tous ces bons mots, je forme des adolescents et des jeunes. On nous pose toujours la question, qu'est-ce que nous avons dans nos sacs? Qu'est-ce que nous avons dans nos économies? Comment stimulons-nous ce que nous avons? Avec DigiFem, nous commençons tout d'abord à travailler avec les femmes qui sont déjà dans les secteurs formels. Nous les formons dans le cadre d'un programme d'incubation pendant 6 mois et passent à un programme d'accélération axé sur la préparation à l'investissement. Et elles sont formées à la méthodologie de création de jeunes entreprises. Comment passer d'une petite entreprise à une entreprise à forte croissance. Et cela se fait par l'expérimentation et tous les outils utilisés par les startups pour créer plus rapidement de la valeur est fait partie de la technologie. Nous avons l'académie qui provient de l'idée que lorsqu'on crée des entreprises qui comprennent comment fonctionnent les entreprises à forte croissance, qui travaillent dans ces entreprises, nous avons besoin des ressources et des talents pour s'assurer que un chef d'entreprise sache comment transformer l'économie et le système, mais dispose également de personnel compétent. Nous avons formé 150, nous formons 150 femmes par an au sein de la CADI. On les forme.
I'm in my mid to late 30s and I think of coding and I'm so intimidated, and you're able to do this with young people and even some of the elderly. Incredibly important in taking us into the future. I will start to look at the floor in a moment, but what I want to do is this, and I'll start with Joshua, then we'll move down with some of our innovators. This is the question that I want us to tackle now, Josh, and that is, what is needed at the moment? So for some of the work that you're doing, you've built the platform, PiggyVest, you've got young people putting their money, well, all people, I suppose, putting their money in building their wealth. Essentially, you might intimidate some of the bigger role players in the banking industry, and I'm keen to hear what you think about that. But there is the question of what it is that you need, right? So that you're able to reach more people, you're able to upscale, you're able to see more. What is the thing that might very well be slowing you down?
Okay, that's a very interesting question. I think that for us, and maybe I'll speak for Nigeria, some of the things that might be slowing us down is, one, you can look at regulation. Regulation is slow to catch up with innovation, right? And they're just kind of stuck in their ways. But I would say that today they're doing better than they were doing. I mean, PiggyVest is 9 years old today, and I know how we started, how it was in the beginning. It was very, very difficult because it was hard to figure out what we're trying to do. But now it's very clear what we're trying to do, and they're bringing us to the table, and we're having those conversations. You know, PiggyVest works with a licensed asset manager today. We have our own. And, you know, that's, you know, progress from where we started. Another thing, again, that's slowing, you know, the growth, I would say, is the nature of the economy. We're not the richest nation, right? So when you start to think about, you know, people who can afford to save, people are living from paycheck to paycheck, right? A lot of people cannot actually afford to save. They have to make money and spend money immediately, right? So you want to go deep into how they do other things. So we started with savings, right? Today we're managing about $300 million in assets. But then someone asked me recently, how do you get the next 5 million users? How do you get the next 10 million users, right? And, you know, my answer to that is you need to now go deeper, right? We already have the attention of some people. How can we help those other people, you know, make better use of their money? So there's something that we're launching very soon. It's a budgeting tool, or it's a different app, actually. It's called Salary Manager. Right, Salary Manager is that tool that will actually help you divide your salary every day and give you the amount you need to spend on a daily basis. Right, so that's how we're thinking about expansion. It's more of going deeper. How can we help the current users we have do better, right? Because not everyone can afford to save. A lot of people are spending money, so how can we help you spend money better?
Right. Yeah. Okay, those are great ones. Thank you so much. And hopefully, as you're here, you're able to find some of those opportunities to meet people here and plug those gaps that you're seeing. Kitiwe, for you, it's all good and well to say, well, we're upskilling, these young people and we're teaching them how to build their own. They need to know where to go. They need to be plugged into market. Talk to me about what it is that you need. That says, if you leave this room today and you've at least told everyone that's here, what your ideal takeout would be, what would that look like?
I think the most critical thing is, I like the slogan that's used in the disability inclusion sector, which is nothing for us without us. Yes. So there shouldn't be solutions for women and youth without the involvement and women and youth sitting at the table to co-create those solutions. I recently, was attending a G20 event, and I think the key theme around the room with regards to women was, we have had enough of empowerment and we're ready. Give us the opportunities. Yeah. So give the women the opportunities, give young people the opportunities. Let's reinvent systems that really center gender responsive financing, and have youth as well at the heart. That's how we're going to innovate. That's how, by ensuring that young people and women are represented across all levels, whether it's government, private sector, the development sector, and as well as young people being at the seat, at the table, and then I spoke about the collective impact concept, which is really critical, and I think overall, those are the key things. We can't be solving. I often say that when people are hiring for black female and they say, we can't find black females. It's like, if you want to find black people, ask other black people where to find them. Yeah. So it's the same point around women and youth, and I think another part that I'm very passionate about that I think is not spoken enough of is people with disabilities. People with disabilities represent 1.3% globally of the population. So we really need to make sure that we are leveraging this, because ultimately the key thing here is the more inclusive we are, the more the innovation is going to happen. There's data and evidence to that.
Absolutely. Okay, Nadine, for you, talk to me about what it is that you need in plugging some of these young people. You've upskilled them. Where do they go after that? And that becomes the critical question. What do you need for them to be given platforms on where to take those skills?
Okay, I think it's initially having local organizations that are sustainable. Because when we start something like DigiFam, it was a program and it was initially funded 100% by the US government. And what happened is that when the US government, USAID changed all the policies, the program was supposed to stop immediately. And this is a program that is having impact and changing the life of 15,000 women in Côte d'Ivoire. So we were planning initially to have a sustainable organization, and we had already set up a local organization run by the program team. So that helped us to really be agile with this change in policy. But what I would ask that is very critical is not only having women at the table and young people, but having women and young people that are already making impact at the right table. The right table is not on panels, it's not to be invited to talk about what we're doing and how we're doing it well. It's the table where the conversations are happening around funding. Where do those funding go? There's funding, we hear about funding, but the organizations that are having impact. Right now with DigiFam Côte d'Ivoire, we're struggling with moving forward with what we've done because we were let down 3 months ago by our donors and we don't know what to do anymore. I thank God we are here and we had a strategy, so we have some program that we are still launching, but it would be very unfortunate to have the program or the organization shut down because there's no takeover from our local organization and our regional organization that are working toward the same goals we are also been working within and also achieving results. The other thing is I had a call with beneficiaries from the program, and that's more factual, where I was to explain to them what happened when the US government took the fund away, because they were expecting their graduation. The program was finished, and they're expecting their graduation, and I had to explain to them, and what they said is, does the development world think that our lives are a game? Because if I take 2 years of my time to go for a program, I expect to move to the next level afterwards. But if you finish training me and I have to go nowhere because the fund is gone from an external, an international partner, then you are also playing with our lives. So that's where I really want to, since we are all sitting here, to exhort everybody working in the development world that we are working with human lives. At the end of the day, we have data, but we have mothers, we have families that are behind it and that are also sacrificing to be able to get the skills that we are telling them we get them to the next level. When we are done training them, we need to prepare job opportunities for them. If we train them in entrepreneurship, we need to give them access to market and access to financing that will make them move to a level we told them they will get to after they get trained and they get the right skill. So this is mainly my call, and also with the local authorities and the local corporates. This change is not only a social change. We are talking about an economic investment. We're talking about the next generation that will be equipped with the right skill to work in cooperation and to work in our local government. It's a duty of everybody to make sure that when we start something that is having an impact, we go to the end of that so we can see our theory of change make sense at the end of it.
Absolutely.
So that's really my call at the end of this.
Please, a warm round of applause. Because other than if you don't get that right, you've created expectation. The skills are there, but they're almost wasted if they're not taken to the end of the road. I'm going to open up the floor for questions. Of course, I know that we're live streaming. Those of us that are live streaming, you're more than welcome to ask your questions as well, and we'll pose them to our panelists. I'll start taking questions as we get the microphone just to the front here, please. All right, and at the back, have we got a microphone to bring down? Okay, just as we bring the microphone close, okay, I'll let you respond at the end of the questions. Once you do give us your question, please introduce yourself. Please make your question as brief as possible and let us know who you're directing it to.
Thank you so much. I'm called Dinansi Saibu. I am the country director of Follow the Money Cameroon, and also the founder of an organization based in Cameroon, Yaoundé, called Actions for Development and Empowerment. Thank you so much for the amazing work that you do, and how you empower young women and young youth from your respective countries. But I want us to start reflecting about how we can be really in the in the room where they talk about money. We don't just want to be in panel where we come and share our experience, like one of you said. We also want to be where they discuss about these resources. Now the freezing account to USAID. So what do we do? Let's follow the money in all of its sectors. So follow the money is a proposition or another question, and maybe you can help me, Zoro, add more flesh to this. Les femmes que vous avez donné les outils attendent plus de toi. Au plus, parce que parfois ils ne comprennent pas ce qui se passe, les politiques et comment ça se passe. I think it's time for us to call on our government to start seeing the work that we do. We have depended so much on external funding that it feels like when they don't give us, everything falls out at part, and this affects the work and the credibility we've been building for years. I think it's the time we start asking government to include us in the national budget in every sector, so that anything that happens to external funding does not affect the work we've been doing for years and people depending on this budget. Because I feel like since 3 days, we focus a lot on external funding, whereas we have plenty of resources in our respective countries, but we don't just follow that money. So while we want more money, more funding from external institutions, let's try going back.
Moreau Jean-Jacques, secrétaire général de la Fondation et la FISOU. Moi, ma contribution est la suivante. Au niveau de notre fondation, nous préférons plus mobiliser les ressources de qui est un cadre de l'administration en Côte d'Ivoire ici, qui, à travers lui-même ses ressources propres qu'il a, il met à la disposition de la fondation. Donc, ce que nous faisons, nous réhabilitons les pompes hydrauliques au niveau des villages pour que les villages aient accès à l'eau. Au niveau de l'éducation, nous offrons les fournitures scolaires aux élèves pour que les élèves puissent aller à l'école. Et puis, nous sommes en train de mener aussi un projet au niveau des cantines scolaires, permettre aux élèves d'avoir accès à l'alimentation pour aller à l'école dans les communautés vulnérables. Comme la dame l'a si bien dit, aujourd'hui, nous, surtout dans les pays en développement, comme en Côte d'Ivoire, j'étais aussi membre du conseil d'administration ses potes. Or, je faisais signe à la présidente du conseil d'administration qu'il arriverait un moment où les partenaires au développement peuvent fermer leurs portes. Mais on fait comment pouvoir mobiliser les ressources? Donc, pour pouvoir mobiliser les ressources, il faut d'abord mobiliser les ressources de manière interne, au niveau local, dans nous-mêmes, nos pays, et puis afin que nous puissions être plus résilients. Parce qu'aujourd'hui, si nos communautés sont vulnérables, sachant qu'on aura aussi l'insécurité aussi dans nos pays, et puis nos pays ne pourront pas aller de l'avant, être des pays prospères. Comme celui du Nigeria aussi a parlé aussi de l'épargne, comment vous pouvez essayer de pouvoir inculquer
then we'll be left on our own. Number two, the coordination. We have MasterCard, we have AfDB, we have Asset, we have Agra, we have all the partners. Everyone is doing something on women. We have a program we are doing in Ghana, supporting Agra. MasterCard is doing the same thing in Ghana. We have another partner doing the same thing in Ghana. And people have perfected. They are grantpreneurs. You find one person in 5 programs, and that person, I don't think they are really deserve. How are we going to be able to coordinate, making sure that the beneficiaries are spread along the ecosystem so that we can build something more beneficial? Last one is that, do you understand really what the target beneficiaries are looking for? What we are doing in Ghana, we thought women agripreneurs are looking for funds.
Yeah.
They are not. They want access to markets. Yeah. Do you understand what you're looking for? Just to come because we want targets and numbers and M&E and reports. Then we come and start delivering money. They're not looking for money because they don't have certification from Food and Drug Authority. They don't know how to package. They don't know how to do leverage on after and ECOWAS and so on and so forth. So how are we going to address this so that we can move? Otherwise, we shall be coming out with nothing after a minute.
Very strong points. I'm going to have to close it there, unfortunately, because we are out of time. But let me encourage you, those of you that still wanted to contribute. I'll take just one more. The gentleman's been quite patient there, Sam. And I know that we really want to keep talking, but as we close off the program a little bit later on, hang around a little bit. Go to the person that you want to speak directly to. Get that business card and share. But I want you, Cynthia, to have the last word here, because from what we've heard, a lot of it lies on, where it is the AfDB perhaps that needs to plug some of those gaps around even sustainable funding. I think that was a really important point that was
au financement, qui est un pan pour le développement de leurs activités. Et je me dis qu'une opportunité comme l'Assemblée générale de la Banque africaine de développement devrait servir de créneau populaire pour qu'aujourd'hui les jeunes puissent savoir comment avoir accès au financement des institutions qui sont disponibles. Et je me rends compte que la salle n'est pas pleine, ce qui montre encore une fois de plus l'accès non seulement à l'information, qui en tout cas découle de l'accès au financement. Alors la question est de savoir pour ceux qui sont panélistes, comment ils ont pu faire pour avoir accès au financement et développer leurs projets qu'ils ont pu réussir. Merci.
Thank you so much for that incredibly important question. I do want to highlight that as the gentleman speaks about the room not being too full, it really isn't about the number of people, it's about the quality of the outcome.
Discussing access to finance this afternoon, that is being led by one of the initiatives that I spoke about this afternoon. I would encourage most young people, actually everyone in the room, to join that session. It is championed by the African Development Bank are done in partnerships with most of the partners that you, the gentleman here mentioned, including And in that regard, actually, and based on some of the lessons that we've learned, we are putting together a community of practice with ministers of finance, who are the ones actually deciding on where the finances that comes through countries go within the countries. My plea to all of you, individuals as well as institutions, NGOs, companies here present is to intentionally approach your governments while seeking sustainable financing, because they know all the partners in the countries. They know which partners you can actually also work with to access finance, but also tackle some of the challenges that you are facing. And also, one of the reasons why we are setting up this community of practice with partners such as ASSET and the Gates Foundation, and possibly others who may come on board.
Just so we're able to take a picture at the end. But what an insightful discussion. And I'd like to ask our audiences as well to clap for yourselves, because this has been an enriching discussion, and it's interesting the quality of input coming from the audience, really speaking to how intentional we all are here in the room. Let me welcome onto the stage, just for a recap and some closing remarks, and perhaps to give us a way forward, right?
Time we have this intergenerational dialogue, I leave learning something new. It's amazing the innovation we see across the continent, especially from young people. So thank you all so much for your time, including our audience today. I would also like to thank our partners, the African Development Bank, and also the MasterCard Foundation, for the continued partnership and unwavering commitment. Today's conversation was not only inspiring, but necessary. It revealed the urgency of placing young people, especially young women, at the center of policy, financing, and leadership. We had financial systems that work for young people, especially young women. We must create leadership structures that reflect the demographics of the continent. We must embed youth and gender into every corner of governance and every stage of our development, not just as a checklist or tick box exercise, but intentional, genuine action. Today, we have had some of the incredible work that is going on the continent. 3 billion naira in just 9 years by Piggyvest. That's amazing. 92,000 young people in South Africa, and the amazing work that DigiFem is doing in training women of all ages in coding. And that, to me, has been a combination of collaboration and intentionality. And as we heard today, nothing for us without us. We're ready. Young Africans are ready. Enough of their empowerment, we're ready. Give us the opportunity. Give us the right to be at the tables, but not just any table, not just the panel discussions, the table where the money is discussed. Follow the money. Today we want to be at the table where the decisions are made around where the money goes, and to reduce our dependency on external donors. So it's a call to action for our governments to increase their investments in the youth of Africa, into young entrepreneurs, and into all these amazing innovations that are ongoing to scale up and to ensure that we, Africa's greatest asset, we the people, and we the young ones, we're not just leaders of tomorrow, we're the innovators and the problem solvers of today. So thank you once again, and let us continue to move forward intentionally and with purpose. Thank you once again. Have a lovely evening.